Good morning, guys. How you doing today? So, welcome back to Max Talk. What we're going to do today is go through an introduction on how to react to contact. So I'm going to give you some context to that, and then I'm going to talk about just go through a little bit on the RTR drill, and then I'm going to do some demonstrations of how we can kind of build into our RTR drill. So the context of this, in terms of having to react to contact, what this is a situation where you are on perhaps some kind of patrol movement, or you might be advancing to contact, or in any situation where you come under unexpected enemy fire. It doesn't mean you don't realize you're in a hostile situation, but you don't know where and when it's gonna come from. So what this means is that in that initial exchange of fire, the enemy has the initiative. So what we're doing with the RTR drill, or how to react to contact, is what we're trying to do is react aggressively and then seize back the initiative. The react to contact drill, the RTR drill, is everybody's individual reaction to contact. What it's going to do is it's initially going to get you to cover, and after that point, that's where you're going to roll into any of the drills that you're going to do, which is further part of the lesson in terms of, are you going to assault through the enemy position, having come under contact? Are you going to break contact? You're going to break contact to the rear, you're going to peel off to the flanks, etc. But the RTR drill is everybody's initial individual reaction. Even though, in a team, you're going to be doing this as a team, that's your individual initial reaction. So what we're concerned with and why we need to train is that we're going to have a couple of freezes to contend with. And the purpose of the react to contact drill is to blow you through that initial freeze by giving you a reaction, allowing you to react aggressively and get yourself into cover, and therefore the idea being to reduce your chances of dying or becoming a casualty. The second freeze is when you're in that piece of cover, you feel relatively safe, but you've got to realize that if you remain there, the enemy's going to maneuver on you and kill you. So what you need to do at that point is, that's where, as I mentioned, we're going to have these other drills, and that's when, having done the RTR drill, having got into cover, then at that point you're going to roll into whatever drill is appropriate to the situation. Today I'm going to focus on the initial reaction. So what the react to contact drill, or the RTR drill, stands for, the mnemonic Romeo Tango Romeo, is return fire, take cover, and then return appropriate fire. So the initial R, what that's designed for, is designed to be a form of reflexive fire at probably relatively close ranges appropriate to the situation, for when you come under that surprise contact. And what that initial return fire, if it's appropriate, and I'll cover that in a second, that initial return fire is designed to interrupt the enemy that's killing you. So that initial reflexive fire is designed to either hit or miss real close to the enemy, to allow you to effectively shoot yourself or get into, and your teammates to get into cover. Then you take cover, and we'll cover how we sort of build into that. And then once you're in cover, you're going to have to return appropriate fire. And one of the most important things there is to locate the enemy, communicate that, direction, distance description, etc., to communicate that so that you can bring the enemy under fire, to begin to suppress the enemy, and then to begin to roll into whatever drill you're going to be doing next. All of this, of course, is covered in great detail in the Tactical Manual. Tactical Manual Small Unit Tactics. So there's a nuance there, because I'll tell you, and I've said before in Max Talks, that there's two hardest things I always say that you're going to do. One is locate the enemy, and the second one is evacuate a casualty under fire. So when you come under fire, it depends on the circumstances. The initial R may or may not be appropriate. There's a little bit of nuance here. You've got to kind of train to understand this. So what do I mean by this? So if we're on a patrol movement and some guy steps out or whatever, or relatively close, or we come under fire relatively close, and there's the guy, then we've got to put rounds back at him in order to get to cover. But if there are situations where you come under fire and you don't exactly know where that's coming from, then in that situation what you need to do is you need to skip that first R and move straight to cover concealment. And so there's various situations where that first R is not appropriate. So the first situation where the first R is not appropriate, or the first return fire is not appropriate, is if you can't immediately locate the enemy. Because what you don't want to do is stand there effectively frozen whilst you're under fire. Because remember, the enemy has the initiative at this time. He might hit you. He may have already hit someone. If you stand around, you're going to get hit. So, for example, you may come under fire at longer ranges. It's a 360-degree battlefield. You may not immediately know where the enemy fire is coming from. You may come under fire at relatively close ranges in a sort of heavy vegetation area, sort of bush jungle environment. There's slightly different drills that we can adapt there. There's cover shooting, which I'm not going to cover today. But in that situation, you may not know immediately where the fire is coming from. And the other situation could be more complex. So, for example, the contact may be initiated, for example, by an explosion, something like an IED, and there may not at that point be any small arms fire, but there's likely to be casualties. So at this point, we've got to go to cover. We've got to be observing our sectors, at which point this may develop into a complex ambush with small arms fire, etc. coming in, at which point then you're going to react. So those are sort of the circumstances where it may be more important to bomb burst into cover than to be concerned about that initial return fire. So we're going to do that initial return fire if it's appropriate. The second reason where that initial return fire, the initial R, is not appropriate is if your position in the formation doesn't allow it. So unless you're like the point guy and the contact comes from the front, or it's slightly easier on the flank, because if it's on the flank and we're in a single file formation, we can all turn. Unless it's that situation, you don't want to be trying to react with fire. The reason for that is that things aren't going to sit still. As soon as that fire starts, people are going to be going all over the place. You might think you've got a shot past that guy. You may have even thought that he's going to go left. Well, maybe he goes right. So don't take the risk on that. Okay, unless you've got a clear fields of fire, a decent safety angle, when that contact begins, boom, everyone's going to be going for cover. Okay, so we're going to conduct the RTR drill, but there's reasons why we may not conduct the RTR drill, and we may conduct a TR drill, as in take cover and then locate the enemy and return appropriate fire. And those reasons are that it's not immediately apparent to us where the enemy fire is coming from, and secondly, we're not in a position in the formation. We've got buddies in front of us who we don't want to be putting rounds into our buddies as they move, as the firefight begins. So when we work on the RTR drill, for example, when we come to class, a Heat 1 class is 4 days, and we spend the first 2 days on the flat range, and we're going to, one of the things we're working on is building up to the RTR drill. So we're going to be building all our fundamentals in, and the different aspects that make up an RTR drill. And I'm going to just demonstrate some of those things. I'm going to demonstrate some stuff slow, demonstrate some stuff fast. So what we're going to be concerned about is, initial ready up drills, engaging targets from a ready up drill, standing, and then we're going to be interested in turning movements, so that the enemy contact comes from a flank or a rear. So in this case, we've got to turn and then do a ready up. And what we're concerned with when we're doing that is we talk about head, body, weapon. So we're turning our head, we're turning our body, and then we're bringing the weapon up. And again, that's also a concern for your buddies. If we're in a single file line and we're all patrolling and the contact comes from over here, I don't want to be flagging, for example, I want to be head, body, weapon as I'm engaging the enemy. And it's important to understand that when we start to build these drills, we're doing them very much by the numbers initially. So it's kind of, threat, okay, ready up, or threat, head, body, weapon, engage. and then maybe drop to a knee, and that's all in one place. And then we're going to move that to then moving off into a piece of cover. One of the issues here is that we initially learned to do these react contact drills, as it were, by the numbers. And one of the things I talked about in the tactical manual was there's a kind of a meme or whatever of training nowadays where you'll see people react to contact and it's kind of a misplaced close quarter battle deal where they'll react to contact and then they'll just be walking towards the enemy. And you've got to remember that the enemy was the one that initiated this contact. They know where you are and you don't necessarily know where they are, depending on their concealment, range, distance, etc. So that's going to get you, you want to soak up a round, just remain standing. So there's a little bit of an argument, I wrote about this in the tactical manual, that well, if I react to contact and then I run to cover, I'm bringing my gun out of the fight, and therefore, you know, I'm concerned about my buddies and that kind of thing. Well, once you get competent at the RTR drill, what you can do is you can adapt it to actually shoot yourself to cover. So you're still getting rounds down, you're still engaging the enemy, but you're moving to cover. And if everybody's doing that, that's going to increase your chance of survival so that your team gets to cover, gets an opportunity to locate and suppress the enemy before moving into the next drill. But what you got to remember there is, and I'm not talking about cover shooting today, is depending on the environment, you've got to have a positive identified target to shoot at. You can't just blast off into the bush. So obviously that's appropriate if there's something to shoot at. Remember what I said to you before about the RTR drill. Sometimes it's going to be RTR, and sometimes it's just going to be TR. Depends on the circumstances and what you can see of the enemy. It's really important, guys, that you train this. We're all about this on Heat 1, and this is kind of the individual part as we build up to team level stuff. You've got to train to blow through the freeze, to get to cover, to know what to do when you're in cover, to know how to roll a pre-planned drill or call a drill on the day. You know, we're going to assault through, we're going to break contact, we're going to peel off to the flank. If you don't know how to do that, if you're trying to make that stuff up on the day, it's not going to happen. Okay, so it's really important that we do some realistic training. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to then go and do some demonstrations. And the way I'll do the demonstrations is I'm just going to kind of build up slowly through, just to demonstrate and show some of the various drills from ready ups to head body weapon, and kind of getting more dynamic as I run through some of the drills. Thanks very much. Okay guys, so like I mentioned, what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to run through some drills, just as a kind of quick introduction to how we're going to build. And I'll just sort of build some aspects from ready ups to turning movements, adding some moving to it, some movement to it from the walk, from the patrol, and then looking to how we can make that RTR drill into cover, and then how we can make that RTR drill more aggressive. Head, body, weapon. Head, body, weapon. Head, body, weapon. So if we start to add some different shooting positions into it, that's not the RTR drill. We're just going from standing to kneeling, etc. We're starting to add some complexity to it as we build these drills. And then ultimately we'll get to the actual RTR drill itself, where we're going to actually move into cover as part of the drill. So return fire, take cover, and then return appropriate fire. Okay, so then we move on to, say, you know, for example, the RTR drill itself. So guys, my point here is just rolling through some drills to show how you can build this from a very sort of basic ready up to a head body weapon at a nice decent pace, how you can add movement, how you can add multiple targets, how you can then start to move off the X, as in the T part of the RTR drill. So we return fire, we're moving to a piece of cover that we've identified on patrol, always looking for the next piece of cover as you move. We get into cover and then we're going to engage whatever targets we decided. So you can build these drills. You can build the RTR drill as you start to work through this. And then what you can also do is start to think about maybe getting more aggressive, actually shooting on the move. And we can do that at various paces. And, you know, we can sort of decide how fast we want to move to cover, whether we want to be shooting as we move to cover, etc. So you can work on these different drills. Now, I would suggest that a kind of a move, shoot, slow deal there is probably not the best thing to do when you come under unexpected enemy fire. I can demonstrate it, but what I'm more interested in myself is I'm gonna get to cover. If I'm gonna be shooting on the way to the cover, then I want to be trying to hit the enemy, but I gotta balance speed versus accuracy. If I'm gonna be shooting, but I'm gonna be getting to cover, I might be getting rounds, preferably I'm gonna hit the enemy. Depending on range, if I can get it like right at him, anything that's going to stop him, put him off, maybe put his head down from killing me and my buddies as I move to cover, is acceptable. This, guys, is not a competition, okay? So, if you've got to get to cover, you've got to get to cover. You've got to decide whether you need to be shooting on the way to cover too, okay? What we'll do here is I'll demonstrate the kind of the slow move shoot technique, and then I'll start doing some faster stuff. Now, if I'm in a hurry, because I don't want to die, a little bit like I demonstrated in the tactical reload video, we might want to trade accuracy for speed and getting to cover. So let's have a look at that. Let's try that again. I'll edit out all the misses. Shh. La la la, fuck! just because I think I blew through enough of that frangible today. By the way, guys, so steel's quite close, so I'm using frangible. So that's the deal there. All right, guys, so just a little bit on the RTR drill. If you come to a Heat 1 class, we spend 2 days building you up on the flat range, all the various drills, all the skills there, building you to a situation where we can get you to operating at team level, doing team drills for the following 2 days out on the tactical ranges. This RTR drill is always going to form part of what you're doing. You're always going to be reacting individually, whether you're the guy, maybe the point guy that actually does get to shoot on that initial contact, or it's a flank contact and everybody gets to turn and shoot, or you're the guy behind, you're the guy at the back, and you're just conducting a TR drill. This is drummed into you at class. So, you know, everyone's going to know the deal. I hope demonstrations weren't too terrible, and thanks very much. Please like, subscribe, get the word out about the Max Talk videos on the YouTube channel. We want to spread the word. Okay, what we're doing here, tactical excellence. We're all about real tactical training. No pew pew, real tactical training. Thank you very much. See you next time.